Yo, with the Xbox One releasing, I guess it's best to take a look at 10 of the greatest console launch titles, so make sure you keep it locked.
Number 10.
Perfect Dark Zero was a launch title for the Xbox 360, and while the game may not have aged all that well in comparison to some of the other titles on the list, the sequel to one of the most popular FPS games of all time demonstrated that the following console generation was going to be a good one for FPS titles as well as games in general. Plenty of colour, plenty of action, and plenty to do. With the inclusion of multiplayer, you've got a launch title that is hard to avoid having played, and for a good reason. Now, many might disagree with this being on the list, but for me this was actually the game that made me rush out and get an Xbox 360, so therefore holds a special place for me when talking about fun games.
Number 9.
Now, so many people and some die-hard Sonic fans have slayed Sonic Adventure left, right and center, but for me this game actually blew me away the first time I played it on my Sega Dreamcast, and looking at the graphics today, it is kind of hard to justify why I found it so good, and even listening to the voice acting isn't the greatest, but during the time period of when I first played the game, I simply couldn't put this game down. It was fun and fast as you would expect from a Sonic game, and even to this day I kind of do still find myself listening to the soundtrack because I did think that the soundtrack was pretty cool. I won't go as far to call this the greatest Sonic game of all time, but for someone who's not really the biggest Sonic fan out there, this was actually probably one of the games that really had a lasting impression in terms of Sonic games for me personally.
Number 8.
Now, I suppose it's pretty difficult to do a list like this and not include Super Mario Bros. On the original Nintendo. Whilst maybe not my personal favourite Mario game of all time, this game is still iconic and has pretty much laid the foundation for platform games to develop from. For those who owned a NES and got this particular game with their console, I'm sure this game certainly holds a very special place in their gaming hearts. And even for the gaming industry, this is one of those games that we should all recognise as groundbreaking for its time.
Number 7.
Killer Instinct was released upon the launch of the Xbox One and was a return to form for the fighting game series that no one had seen in years. This new iteration had some great looking visuals and some incredibly satisfying gameplay to go along with it. Whether you chose to play against your friend, a stranger or an AI, you'll be walking away from Killer Instinct with the sole intentions of coming back as soon as you can get away with it. I always thought that possibly the game might not live up to my personal expectations for Killer Instinct, especially how much I love the Super Nintendo version of the game, but this game to me is up there with the best fighting games on the current gen.
Number 6.
Unfortunately, the Halo franchise isn't a series that's been getting much love as of late, but you have to hand it to the franchise when you start off as strong as the original Halo. It's quite hard not pale in comparison. Halo Combat Evolved was the first rendition of the popular and award-winning sci-fi FPS game that had a whole generation falling for a Spartan in big green armor going by the name of Master Chief. Even to this very day, you could load up Halo Combat Evolved and enjoy the campaign or multiplayer all the same as if it was the very first time all over again.
Number 5.
Power Stone is another one of those titles that hasn't exactly aged all that well over the years, at least when it comes to the visuals, but the gameplay still remains the same hectic fun that it originally was. This fighting game had several characters to choose from, with each one being that much more unique than the last. I would actually love to see a HD remake of this particular game, but I guess 3D fighting games are one of those things of the past nowadays, but Power Stone has managed to stem to the test of time. I wasn't even going to include this title as it wasn't actually a launch title in the UK for the Sega Dreamcast, but first off, when I first got my Dreamcast, this was actually the first game that I got for the console, and when I learned that the US got this game as a launch title, I just had to include it on my list.
Number 4.
Soul Calibur is similar to Power Stone in some ways, both released on the Sega Dreamcast as a launch title in the US, both 3D fighting games, but time has been that just little bit kinder to Soul Calibur and its fan base. What made the game so unique in comparison to the other fighting games out there at the time was the inclusion of weapons for every single character, and even looking at the game now just goes to show that it's held up so well over the numerous amount of years that it's been out. This is another game that to me is a classic, and one of the main reasons the Sega Dreamcast even to this day is among my favorite console of all time, as the console just had so many great games.
Number 3.
Among there with the greatest 2D Super Mario games that ever be released, the Super Nintendo was treated to this absolute gem at the time of its launch. Not only was the gameplay solid, smooth and as close to perfection as Nintendo could get it, the colours and aesthetics for all of it are something you won't see nowadays with such ease. Pretty much everything about this game has managed to demonstrate why it's one of the best launch titles ever to be released and one of the best 2D Super Mario games we've had the pleasure of playing.
Number 2.
Moving on from one of the greatest 2D Mario games, we head straight to one of the best 3D Super Mario games that throughout all this time has yet to be topped by some people's opinion. Similar to the previous entry, Super Mario 64 is a gorgeous looking game even now, and is filled to the brim with bright, vibrant colours and gameplay that is so solid it is one of the most speed ranked games every single year because of it, and that's not something that will be changing anytime soon. This was actually my first game for the Nintendo 64, and on first impressions all the way through to the final impressions, this game literally blew me away. I collected the 420 stars with the assistance of my sister and cousin, and we certainly cherish the great memories this particular game created.
Number 1.
Yo, while it may be the latest title on the list, Breath of the Wild is indisputably the reason the Nintendo Switch has been doing so well on its release. Everything about the game is close to perfect, such as the visuals that are bright and beautiful in every angle you look at them. The game not only looks great, but the gameplay in of itself is smooth, satisfying, and almost every single time you load up the game, you'll somehow manage to find something brand new in the very first truly open world Legend of Zelda game. Well, I guess some die-hard Zelda fans will argue that the Legend of Zelda on the NES is open world, but you do get my gifs. When you combine all of those great elements, plus with the beautifully told story that you won't want to miss, it's no wonder it made my number 1 spot. Anyway peeps, thanks for sitting through my countdown video of 10 of the best console launch titles in my opinion. Let me know what your favourite launch title was of all time and what games did I miss off my list. If you enjoyed this video, do hit the like button and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so before. And until next urban gameplay video, we definitely say peace out peeps.
Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for more cool urban gameplay videos.